3 strikes. I was like catnip for bad boys, men with issues. In the early 1990s, there were mandatory life sentencing laws in many states for repeat criminal offenders, known as 3 strikes laws, because they were invoked when offenders committed their 3rd violation. This comes with a fixed 25 years to life. The motive behind the laws was getting career criminals off the streets, and they were commonly cheered as good public policy, but personally, I'm a critic. These sentences are too often disproportionate to the crime committed, and correctional costs are astronomical. When Valerie was only a few months old, Steve's employer charged him with theft, and he was subsequently arrested. He had taken some refurbished electronic dog shot collars and sent them to family members. By all standards, it was petty theft, but the boss, owner, trumped up his losses, charging Steve with a 3rd felony. Steve may have deserved it. His boss knew of his history and generously offered him minimum wage employment with a firm, warning not to betray his trust. Steve had betrayed him. Steve knew for months that he was being investigated, but he didn't tell me. I was dumbfounded and totally stunned when he was suddenly arrested on some idle Wednesday. I know what you're thinking, and the answer is no. I'm not going to explain Steve's other felonies in any detail, out of respect for his beloved deceased mother. He thought he would be serving life, so the 3 strikes terror gave him firm resolve and reasoning to end his life. Steve was to blame, and it ruined us. I think human beings are the only species that can be negative in socially evaluating themselves, sometimes leading to a shame-provoked suicide. Facing life, Steve directly demonized himself. He became arrogant and wholly detached. I tried to support him, taking a second mortgage out on the house and making his $10,000 bail. I hired the best lawyer I knew. It was all futile, all in vain. Steve had already wholly given up on himself and on life. Steve expressed an intolerable, unremitting, and egocentric tunnel vision towards death. He had already decided he would never go to jail again. I was beginning to give up on him. "I'll die before I go back to jail," he bellowed. There were now drop-dead deal-breakers within our relationship. I couldn't believe he was threatening suicide and broke the law again. How hard could it be not to break the law? After all he'd experienced, how could he even consider stealing a newspaper? I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I wanted to help him. In his mind, the only possible alternative to prison would be not living long enough to face up to it. He told me his heart had gone cold, and he didn't know how to feel anymore. He wanted to kill himself and was intoxicated with the promise of permanent peace. Listening to this, and having images of Kirk's mangled head flashing through my mind, I thought I was going to throw up. The casualness of his threat, straight to my scarred face, made me feel both repulsed and livid. I expressed my resentment inconsiderately and with a lack of empathy towards Steve. "Shut up." I swiftly raised my hand up in the hope that he would stop talking, but he doesn't. The situation was explosive, unhealthy, and now dangerous. I lived through Kirk's suicide and had heard these abhorrent and manipulative threats of suicide from Mom all my life. He knew that. How dare he use them against me now? It never ends. I jumped up and dialed the police in seconds. I did it right in front of him. I would not betray his trust, but he had gone too far in his captivation with death. In many ways, I had given up too, but certainly not on life. I absorbed some of Steve's emotions and then experienced a change in my own mood. We both were experiencing a flash flood of pain, and we hurt each other in every way we could. I say we because I held my part in the precarious aggression and grief. I definitely compounded his pain. I hate how things transpired between us. I would not make the silence mistake again. I repeated to myself what I'd learned in survivors of suicide meetings. Any threat of suicide, however minor, should be taken seriously.